first, the chances Pete Alonso signs before February 1st.
Oh.
He's hit 30-plus home runs every full season of his career, including, I can't see, 100%.
100%.
Okay,
He's got to sign.
100%.
Where's he signing? Write it down. Go.
Ooh.
Second question, 1A.
Mets. He's going back home.
Across the board. You both think he's the best fit.
Bring him back
in
home.
Flushing, Queens.
Do the right thing.
Yeah,
Up next, the rumors are there. What are the chances Corbin Burns does not sign with the Giants? You just heard JP Morosi a moment ago.
Does not sign with the Giants.
Does not sign.
Does not sign with the
Bakersfield,
Giants.
California native. 15-9, a 2.92, and 32 starts in 2024. 0%. Why can't you hear that?
Wow, you think he's signing with the Giants, period?
No doubt.
Wow,
No doubt.
I think there's too many other teams that want him. I mean, the price of poker is going to go up to maybe where somebody just like Soto to the Mets, like, we want him, we're going to get him. I don't care
No matter what.
Yeah.
He's going home, dude.
Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, Corbin Burns. Yes, please. Up next, chances.
Interesting.
Alex Bregman is wearing an Astros uniform on opening day. First 9 seasons with the Astros. There's zero. There's zero?
He gone.
Oh, my God.
I'm saying he gone.
That's a lot. 2-time World Series champion, 26 home runs. 23. You guys are.
I didn't have the
That's
guts to
statistics
go
on
all
this
the
one.
way in like Matt, but I'm feeling Matt's.
I don't think he's going back.
I don't think he's going back either.
Where's he going?
Somewhere, but he ain't going.
No, I need to know now.
Still pushing
Is he going
for
to the Bronx?
Detroit. Still pushing for
AJ.
Detroit. I don't think it's going to be the Yankees. We're just speculating here, right? Just to make it
part of the
clear
fun.
for everybody. We're just
He wants
guessing
to go back
here.
to the Detroit.
I think he's
Wow.
going there.
Nothing Boston. That's what JP was just talking
I
about.
think he's playing second base, though.
That is unbelievable, man.
They're not moving Devers yet for $300 million. They got a lot of stuff to do.
Boston.
You know what's
give up on
interesting
Texas.
about this game, Lauren?
Tell me.
Is that we play this game and it's couched
Play
as
to win.
we're just guessing and all that stuff. Harold knows a lot more.
No, he knows more. So
He's
copy
wired.
off his paper.
All right, I'm gonna copy Harold's now.
We would never do that, kids out there. Never. I have 2 more. Chances Roki Sasaki does not sign with a California-based team. Here's 2 front runners, Dodgers and Padres right now, 23 years old, coming over stateside. This is 0% for you.
Yeah.
In 29 and 15 record of 2. That's not real, Matt.
0.02%.
That's just you're just trying to move the needle.
It's a 0. He's going to sign with the California team.
Which team is it going to be?
That was easy.
Actually, the 0.02, I give it a chance that Seattle. You know, Seattle's always in play for those guys
There's
too.
only one more Dodgers for you. Not even a question?
No.
Okay, this last question is very interesting and perhaps the most difficult of them all. The holiday party is this week. What are you laughing for? Are you going? Yes, you're
I'm
going.
not going. 0%.
I'm going.
The percent chance is 0.
You went last
I
year.
went last year.
Didn't like it?
Year.
It was a
so
great
fun.
party.
It's a great party.
All right.
Yeah.
The chances someone from Hot Stove calls out after the holiday party later this week, meaning, so the holiday party's on Thursday?
For Friday?
Friday's show. Nobody's calling out?
We're all
Everyone's
here.
Well, you're off that day anyway.
Yeah, we're all
here.
We're all locked in.
0%. We're all coming in.
Thanks for playing. You guys not.
You know who might not be in that next day?
A week after the winter meeting, still so many big names out there. Steve Phillips, as we say good morning to you. Let's sort through it all. I was talking with JP Morosi earlier about Alex Bregman. Astros fans concerned about no Kyle Tucker. Will another one of their own be on the move? What do you think right now, mid-December?
Well, you know, what's interesting is that it's so hard to really know. Like, they offered 6 at 156. That was made public. And so that, which is beyond the Matt Chapman deal. It seems like a nice start. But there seem to be so many teams in on Bregman that it could potentially go to a 7th year. And do the Astros want to do it? Even going to 6 years for them is beyond a comfort level. And then when you hear talk that there's serious interest from the Astros for Nolan Arenado, and they pick up Isaac Paredes, you start to think to yourself, well, Paredes could play first, Arenado could play third, and so it's hard to understand whether those stories are about real interest or whether they're just stalking horse, right? That you want to create an alternative in a negotiation to say, listen, we know, Scott, that you have Boris, you have Alex Bregman. We like Bregman, but we're not at any cost. We have a pivot. We have another place to go. And so it's hard to know whether the interest in Arenado is real, whether it's a potential bluff to just get the negotiation going. But for Alex Bregman, a lot of teams with interest there, he's going to do well. The question is, will he get the 7th year of the deal? And will it come from Houston? I don't think Houston will go 7 years.
It says the Mets interest on the screen. And when you think Mets, you think Pete Alonso. We were playing a game earlier, and I said percentage he's not with the Mets. Both the guys think Flushing is the perfect place for him. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's so interesting, right? So Pete Alonso with the Mets, but then we're hearing the Mets have some interest in Alex Bregman. The Mets could get a third baseman and move Mark Vientos to first, or they can re-sign Alonso or Christian Walker and go that direction with things. Now we're hearing Rhys Hoskins is potentially available. So it's really hard to know. And I think that for Pete Alonso, their view there was that he was going to get over $200 million, that he was going to get the bigger payday. And I just don't think the market's there for first baseman. We see Matt Olson and we see Freddie Freeman, both at around $160, $170 million. And I think Pete Alonso probably is slotted in there. The Mets have decided to wait, let him go to free agency, let him understand that what he thinks his market isn't really there. In the meantime, for the Mets, they're setting up alternatives. Would they go after Bregman? Would they go after Christian Walker? Would they go after Rhys Hoskins? And so I think everybody's sort of building in alternatives. And what's interesting, if the Mets truly have interest in Bregman, well, he's represented by Scott Boras. So how do you bluff the agent who represents both players?
You can't.
Right? Right? It's so complicated, so interesting. Feels like a conflict in many ways, but I think that I'll be shocked if Alonso doesn't end up with the Mets. I just think it's the right fit, and I don't know that somebody will go beyond what the Mets are willing to do.
And they still have questions on the mound. No Minaya yet. Luis Severino went to the Athletics. Did that move to you signify there's more to come from the Athletics? What will their winter look like?
Yeah, I talked to David Forrest, their general manager, at the winter meetings, had a chance on our radio show to interview him, and they're going to spend some money. And so we saw the Jeffrey Springs trade where he's making $10.5 million for the next 2 years with an option for $15 million. They add that to their payroll, and they're going to spend some money. Now, speculation is they're going to get up to about $100 million. And it was interesting because David Forrest said, I heard you on Hot Stove on MLB Network talking about the potential of us trading Brent Rooker. And he said, I understand why you think that way, but we think he's part of the solution. And though he's only controlled for 3 years, I got the sense that they're going to look to lock him up, to try to make him part of the growth of this young team, to be the centerpiece of that team so that when they do go to Las Vegas, he'll still be on that roster. Now, he's a late bloomer. He's 30 years old with 3 more years of control, but don't be surprised if at some point we see the Athletics go down the road of locking him up for the long term and make him a part of the core of this team that they're looking to really start to compete in 2025 and really get closer. So when they move into the new stadium in Vegas in 28, they're a playoff contending team.
I asked Brent Rooker questions hundreds of times leading up to last year's trade deadline. Perhaps it will be different this time around. What about Orioles fans, Steve, who don't want to see Santander and Corbin Burns? Well, if no Corbin for Baltimore, then who?
Well, right. So Blake Snell's off the board. Yep. Max Fried's off the board. And so now you start to look at it and think, well, there's Jack Flaherty, who's a free agent, maybe a Walker Buehler, but both of them, have some question marks. Look, remember, the Yankees walked away from Flaherty at the trade deadline for 2 months because their doctors weren't sure about him. They had Flaherty in 2023 after the deadline, and it was not a great relationship, right? It had a 6+ ERA, didn't go well. He's more of a West Coast guy. And so Dylan Cease is available. But does Mike Elias want to go down the road again of trading for a starting pitcher with 1 year left before free agency like he did Burns and then potentially lose that guy again? And so for me, they should, if they're not going to get Burns, and I think they should pay the premium. Burns should be an Oriole. I think it's the move for them. They need an ace. If they don't get an ace this offseason, it will be a failed offseason for them. They could dabble on Luis Castillo, maybe make a deal there, send an offensive player where they could free up some money in Seattle, then spend some money, get another offensive player. But I think that the Orioles are in a spot right now that the pressure's there, that they're losing out on alternatives, right? The fallback isn't great at this point. If you don't get Burns, you're taking a step back. They need to get Corbin Burns done.
Steve, before we say goodbye to you, Harold has a very important question.
Hey,
Sure.
Steve, I'm putting my glasses on. I'm looking a little closer. We're 9 days from Christmas. I got to start wondering, are kids coming up to you thinking you're Santa Claus? When's the flight?
Oh, interesting. Well, it would be New Year's Eve would be the flight. And I would say one thing that I know for sure, Harold, you're now on the naughty list. You're absolutely on the naughty list after asking that question. Lauren is always on the nice list. Maddie's always, sort of swaying either direction. I'm still waiting to figure that one out. Because if he doesn't knock you out after asking that question, then he may end up going on the naughty list as well.
Terrible question.
Oh, yes. He's been dying to get you on that, I guess. Steve, thanks, as always.
Time of the year.
Great stuff. It is that
Thanks,
time of
Steve.
year.
Ho, ho, ho.
So while you were watching maybe the Heisman show on Saturday or other things, there was plenty of big baseball news that started on Friday that we want to catch you up on. Starting with a deal we learned of as we were leaving the building here Friday afternoon, and that's Kyle Tucker going to the Chicago Cubs in exchange for a really intriguing package that includes Isaac Paredes, Hayden Wesneski, and prospect Cam Smith. Wesneski, perhaps not a coincidence, a Houston native. Isaac Paredes is probably the biggest immediate contributor on this group that goes to Houston. He's going to play third base most likely. He's not a free agent until 2028, so there's plenty of canvas left, as opposed to Kyle Tucker, who, despite being a big-time run producer and one of the best left-handed bats in the game, only has one more year of service time left on the contract. So my question for you is this. I feel like the Astros made a really good trade here because they have this issue now with Alex Bregman, who appears closer to leaving now that they've acquired a third baseman. That's a side story. But you had Tucker, who you had to get back into bed with Scott Boras with, and that's a tough renegotiation, right? Boras likes to bring his guys to the open market.
Yep.
Now it's the Cubs' problem because they're going to have 1 year of Kyle Tucker before they have to enter this long negotiation again to keep him there. Who won this trade at very first glance for you?
Well, look, the Astros had to trade him. And when you're in a have-to situation, they did great. Kyle Tucker's going to help the Cubs go to the next level depending on what they decide to do with the rest of their roster.
Yeah, and I misspoke. Kyle Tucker is listed as a client of XL Sports Management, so not a Scott Boras client.
But I still think it's going to be hard to lock him up. I thought he was a Boras guy.
Yeah, I did too.
Okay.
We were quickly corrected, Max.
So,
Thanks for that.
So, look, that's my takeaway from it. Maybe they're able to do the year courtship and work out a long-term deal. That's what the Cubs are banking on. And a lot of that has to do with the relationship with the agent. If that was a Boras client, it's not no knock. It's just Scott's taking him all the way.
Yeah.
So that's not a deal that you want to do. So it makes a little more sense for the Cubs. But here's my takeaway from it all. We've watched now Montgomery get traded from the Red Sox, and we watched Cam Smith now get traded. Both first-round picks last summer.
Yeah.
It's time to trade the draft picks. You imagine if you're going to say, they've been in the team, 3 months, 4 months, and now they get dealt? What if you were able to sit there and go, trade deadline, I'm trading the 13th pick in the draft, and I'm going to go ahead and go get Burns or somebody in a deal. I'm just making it up.
Right.
But I think we're at that point in baseball. You want to make our trade deadline a little more exciting? Throw the draft pick in.
Right. The only trading you can do on picks is with comp picks, as we know.
Right.
And wasn't that the Incaviglia rule? Wasn't that what they call the Incaviglia rule?
Could have been. I don't know. But it's time to change it. I mean, we put such stock now in the minor league system.
Right.
That guys are actually getting longer-term deals because my minor league system's better than yours.
Right.
But if you have a coveted major league player that you have to go get and you want to move, imagine Kyle Tucker last year at trade deadline, and you knew you could go get a top draft pick for him. That deal would have been done easy.
I think on behalf of the Cubs, and we're not meaning to say the Cubs made a bad deal here, I think they have a pretty good sense that Kyle Tucker is somebody they have a strong chance of keeping beyond the year, right? Because the reporting was that he was thrilled with the trade, really pleased to be going to a place like Wrigley Field, like the Cubs, organization, et cetera, history. So maybe they think because of that, they've already done their research. I'm sure they have. I mean, that's a pretty bright group.
And they have a relationship, I'm sure, with his representatives. that made them feel
Same agent as Dansby Swanson.
that made them feel
right.
confident that, hey, we can work something out long term if Kyle says he likes it.
So this could turn into a win-win for both sides.
Yeah.
I do like the deal the Astros made, though, because it's going to make it easier for them if they're unable to retain Alex Bregman.
Last week there was plenty to talk about. JP Morosi, let's
not to
run
like?
it
He's
back.
tremendous.
I think he's tremendous as well. Good morning to you, all the Astros fans in my life, JP, who are heartbroken over Kyle Tucker, are clinging to hope. Alex Bregman is back in H-Town. What can you tell them December 16th? Good morning.
Lauren, good morning. Nothing close at this hour from what I've been told with respect to Alex Bregman possibly returning to the Space City. Let's remember, as Matt documented, Paredes can play third base. And indeed, if the Astros had to play a game here on December 16th, they'd have Paredes at third and Pena at short, Altuve at second, and Singleton likely at first base. I believe right now, Lauren, based on what I've been able to piece together, there is at least as much of a chance of Bregman going to Boston as Bregman going to Houston. And let's remember the essential reason why the Red Sox loom as a possible candidate to invest heavily in someone like Alex Bregman. They made a big offer to Soto. They made a big offer to Fried, signed neither of them, and then addressed a rotation vacancy by acquiring Garrett Crochet. So clearly, there is still a strong capacity for the Red Sox to sign a major free agent, and that major free agent could eventually be Alex Bregman.
I feel like, JP, we've been talking about the same 6 major names. I had Corbin Burns at the top of that list. Is the link to San Francisco real? Because it seems to be, and are they nearing anything?
The link is real. There is no deal close, Lauren, at this hour from what we can gather. But the Giants are viewed by many as one of the front runners and perhaps the front runner to sign Corbin Burns. Remember, Corbin Burns, of course, pitched in the Bay Area in college. He makes his home in Arizona now, so close to home. If he ends up signing in the National League West, that would be an ideal fit, I think, from a personal family perspective among the available options for him. We know this, Burns and his representation likely trying to go beyond the deal that Max Fried was able to sign in New York. And so that means that it would be a deal in excess of $200 million. And the Giants, with Buster Posey now as the president of baseball operations, they are in the market for big-time free agents. They've already signed Willie Adames, and it would not surprise anybody, Lauren, in the industry if they eventually sign Corbin Burns.
I know plenty of Orioles fans who wish he was back in Birdland. Time will tell. Cody Bellinger, when you read the ties to the Yankees, it seems, just from what you read, that they're at the finish line. Is that accurate?
No. I believe, Lauren, that right now there is still a lot of conversation happening, and a lot of it has to do with the financial aspect of things. For the Cubs' perspective, if they end up saying that we need to have, or for example, if the Cubs are insisting on the Yankees inheriting the significant part of the contract, but then the Yankees are turning around saying, no, you need to pay it, that's why we have a stalemate. I do believe it's just a matter of, if it's a question of players, they likely do have the ability to come together on what the players package could be. But the financial one, as D-Row would say, the financials are probably the sticking point here. We see what Bellinger did. It was a drop of about 100 points at OPS from 23 to 24. And so, yes, there is a lot of conversation back and forth. Bellinger fits the Yankees really well, a very athletic bat that could certainly play first base at this point in time or center field. But right now, Lauren, I do believe the financial aspect, from what I was told last night, is the sticking point between the Yankees and the Cubs.
All right, let me lock in on the financials.
No Soto is fascinating in the Bronx. I was reading The Athletic today about Luis Castillo. I didn't realize there was willingness to move him. The price must be high. Yes? What are you hearing?
The price is high, and I think, Lauren, the issue for the Seattle Mariners is this. They have had a hard time with their current budget limitations upgrading their lineup. And so they are at least willing to entertain the very difficult proposition of trading this man, one of the very best arms in the American League. And the reason why they would move him is that he has the biggest contract among their dynamic starting pitchers. And so whether it ends up being the Baltimore Orioles or the aforementioned Chicago Cubs or any other number of teams out east, there are potential fits for Castillo, but they're going to have to get back the Seattle Mariners the right amount of impact offense. There's been a lot of talk. We visited this discussion last week, Lauren, about the potential fit of the Boston Red Sox, whether it's Tristan Casas or someone else. If it's Baltimore, is it a Kobe Mayo? The Seattle Mariners realize, Lauren, they need to get better in their lineup. And they've arrived at the realization that unless they're going to invest heavily in free agency, and they're tending to not do that, the other option for them is to trade Luis Castillo for a bat.
Before you go, Jesus Luzardo, been linked to the Cubs. Anyone else?
I do think right now the Cubs and that fit is a very interesting one for the Jesus Luzardo. There's been some conversation about Owen Casey potentially being the piece that would go back from the Cubs to the Marlins. But Luzardo is an interesting alternative. You see his ERA at the bottom of the screen. Not an especially healthy season and not really at the peak of what he's been able to do. You look at it year over year, his top year was 2023, close to 180 innings pitched for him. Of course, there were injuries that came in. He is, in some ways, Lauren, the Garrett Crochet alternative. And now that Crochet has been moved, the market can now pivot to Luzardo. The Marlins do believe, very importantly, they've got Sandy Alcantara coming back for a full season, they hope, in 2025, which has made Luzardo somewhat expendable. And the Cubs, as we've talked about, with that depth of outfielders with Pete Crow Armstrong right now, still Asaya Suzuki there in the outfield too. Owen Casey from Mississauga, Ontario, is a fit there as well.
Awesome information, as always.
Jack Curry from Yes Network, as expected. Tucker is traded. Yankees had discussions with the Astros, but they weren't going to include the dynamic Luis Gil, who won the Rookie of the Year award and can't be a free agent until 2029.
Yeah, I never thought that deal made sense to me either. You weren't giving up Gil.
Well, they did make a deal, the Yankees, again, back to Friday. And just to catch you up, Devin Williams, one of the premier closers in all the sport. Again, like Tucker, with only 1 year of canvas left on his current contract, it was very likely that the Brewers made a deal for him at some point before the trade deadline. Turns out that some point was Friday. In exchange, Nestor Cortes goes to America's Dairyland, along with a minor leaguer, Caleb Durbin, and cash considerations. Nestor was a wildly popular Yankee, but Devin Williams is Devin Williams, and I think the Yankees scored a pretty big hit here. Yankees GM Brian Cashman on the deal.
Definitely, this is a high-quality arm, to fit into with the pen, and we lost some key players here recently. Now, we like what we already have on the roster that we're happy to still retain, but I need to give Aaron Boone and Matt Blake at least more options coming out of those out of the pen for us. So that's ultimately what led us to do something like this.
It's a balance probably with both of the players involved. I think the first is trying to help the team today, and we think we definitely do that with bringing somebody in with the pedigree of Nestor Cortes. And, at the same time, you add somebody like Caleb Durbin, who is a young, talented prospect who's performed at every level up through the minor leagues and also has a chance to help us. And we feel like he does add that tail of control to this deal that we feel good about as well.
So the last image that we had of Devin Williams was the airbender that didn't airbend to Pete Alonso in the playoffs last year. Get that out of your brain. This guy's an elite closer. And remember what an impact he made when he was healthy. He's had some injury stints, right? He had a back fracture that cost him 4 months to start this season. Mm-hmm. Punched a wall or a bench at one point a couple years ago. But when this guy's healthy, and that's usually the case, he is one of the two best closers in my book, along with Emmanuel Clase in the sport. This is a big deal for the Yankees.
Well, remember COVID year, Rookie of the Year, right? In the COVID season, I believe. So, look this is a lot like the Tucker deal. They had to make a move, and so they made the move. They got something back. But the big story here, the takeaway for me, you look at Devin Williams' numbers on the board. The takeaway is the Yankees are pivoting, and they're pivoting heavy. They went and got Max Fried. Now you go get Williams. And that's the Soto money that they are spending, and now their pitching staff is better.
Well, and you don't even have to pay Williams yet.
Not yet. If you want to extend him out, that falls in my category under the Soto money. You know, whatever that deal ends up being long term, they're not letting him. They didn't get him for short term. They work out a long term deal with this guy. That falls underneath the decision they made. But Cashman said something last week where they were going to acquire pitching. It gave them flexibility to make moves. That's why Nestor Cortez was able to be moved to go get a Devin Williams. I mean, look, I do that deal all day long.
Sure, they love Nestor, but we're talking about Devin Williams here.
Absolutely.
You're going to get Devin.
So now they're sitting there going, we've watched Mariano Rivera, what he did with our club and how he impacted the Yankees for all those years. Even when he wasn't the great Mariano at the end, he still impacted everything he did. Not that he ever struggled. But you have a guy at the back end of the bullpen that you know you can depend on. I mean, you throw out the Pete Alonso home run, I get it. But if you look at what this kid has done, he is reliable, dependable, and he is. And now you take that and you start building that bullpen forward. Pretty good stuff.
He's a Eric Gagne of the Dodgers when he was at the peak of his powers was the guy that with the game over T-shirt. Devin Williams is a game over guy.
I mean, look at all the closers in the game. Where's he fit?
Well, I mean, when he's done with his career, he might be
no,
a
but
top
I mean, like
five,
current right now, of all the 30 teams.
Either one or two for me.
Exactly.
It's him and Clase A.
Yeah.
The rest of it's just kind of a
we'll figure
conversation.
It out.
So more from Brian Cashman. We talked about Alex Bregman, and it appears that he's closer and closer to exiting the Space City. And there were some interesting comments that Cashman made on Bregman that we want to react to.
You know, he's been a thorn in our side for years, along with a lot of other people's side. He's now into free agency. I'm sure he's got a whole boatload of choices, and really good players like him make a lot of money.
They're not getting him.
No shortage of suitors here for him. We've talked about the great fit that would be in Detroit. There'd been people kicking the tires on the Red Sox and maybe moving people around on that infield. The Yankees, sure, the need is apparent, right? He plugs right into third base. Jazz Chisholm goes to center field or second base, and you're all set. I'm not quite sure about it. I don't know how many ex-Astros have been coveted in the Bronx, because we heard about Correa, and then we heard there was some internal pushback about bringing in an Astro. I think there's still some bad feelings about the way that particular postseason went down with Jose Altuve hitting a home run against Aroldis Chapman.
Yeah, that's the first thing you think about, right?
I mean, that's worse. This is pure speculation here, but I get the baseball fit. I'm not sure I'd put the Yankees as the team at the top of the list. If we're going to assign percentages to the teams who we think are going to get them, I would not put the Yankees first.
I'm with you. I just think that you can't overlook that there is bad blood there. So you got to explain it. And on Alex's part, if he doesn't get off to a hot start playing in the Bronx, what do you think the fans are going to be yelling at him the whole time? That's a tough fit.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I don't know. Look, if he signed with the Yankees and hit a homer on opening day,
he's a Yankee.
Period.
I get it.
You know, that's how fickle we are as fans, and you and I fall into that same category.
Talk about a thorn in your side.
やはりドジャースは規定路線なんでしょうか。シアトルに行く可能性は 0.02% ってだいぶ低いですね。まだ詳細等は全く出ていませんが、年明けの1月16日前後にわかるのではとの報道もあるので、楽しみにしていきましょう。そして、菅野投手の移籍が正式決定してよかったですね。前回はうまく決まらなかったので、今回は決まって本当に良かったと思います。今夜放送される現地番組で情報が出ると思いますので、明日はその内容を翻訳してお届けしたいと思います。それでは次回の動画でお会いしましょう。さようなら。